Alison Sargent joins me on the set now to take a look at what the papers have been saying today. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Jeannie.
Let's start in Algeria with reactions to the Constitutional Council's decision to cancel the presidential election that was scheduled for July 4th.
That's right, Jeannie. A decision that doesn't come as a huge surprise. It's what protesters have been asking for weeks, basically, since these elections were scheduled. The paper Al Mujaid, which is close to the Algerian ruling class, explains that the interim government wanted to make sure that the adequate conditions were in place to hold a, quote, transparent and neutral election. The paper also writes that the decision was made under pressure from this popular uprising, and many papers are seeing this as a victory for protesters. But the paper Le Temps has a much more cynical attitude to this. They see canceling the election as a ploy for the ruling class to hang on to power, since it means that the current interim president, Abdelkader Ben Salah, will remain in his position for an even longer transition period. Protesters reject him. They don't want Ben Salah or any other symbol of Bouteflika's former regime to be part of this transition period, which is now set to continue even longer.
Alison, another big story out of the UK that is holding its first ever state visit for U.S. President Donald Trump.
That's right, Jeannie. And the UK has big plans to welcome the U.S. president, as you can see on the front page of The Independent today. An image of the famous Trump baby blimp projected there onto the cliffs of Dover. The actual blimp is expected to be out in the streets of London during some big protests this week. The Guardian is making their position on Donald Trump's visit quite clear in their editorial today. You can read that headline there. The president is not welcome. The Guardian's main concern is that Donald Trump's presence and public statements will, quote, boost anti-democratic and right-wing populist elements in the UK. Public statements like supporting Boris Johnson and his no-deal Brexit, also saying that Brexiteer Nigel Farage should be in charge of those negotiations with Brussels. And we see both Johnson and Farage in this cartoon from Brian Adcock in The Independent today. This is, Jeannie, the D-Day landing, D as in Donald. We can see he has come there to liberate his British allies. He's also come to commemorate the fallen, which we see in this cartoon from Morton Moreland in the Times. It's not fallen soldiers, but the fallen politician, Theresa May. The Prime Minister is set to step down at the end of the week.
Now, one person Donald Trump won't be meeting during this trip is fellow American Meghan Markle.
That's right. She is still on maternity leave, and it's probably for the best. British tabloid The Sun released a recording over the weekend of Donald Trump calling Meghan Markle nasty for criticizing him. Now, Donald Trump has since denied saying this, despite the comments being on tape. You can see this is actually making front pages in the UK. It's also getting a lot of attention back in the US. Many have been welcoming Meghan Markle to the cult of nasty womanhood. And just to complete, Jeannie, sort of the tabloidy section of this press review, papers have been pointing out that Donald Trump appeared with a new hairdo on Sunday. You can see it there in these photos, quite slicked back. Many people were wondering if maybe he's tidying himself up, getting ready to go meet the Queen. Others, though, pointed out that he had just come from playing golf, and so this might just be a very serious case of hat hair.
All right. Earlier, Alison, you were talking about a fallen politician, Theresa May, but papers in France and Germany are also looking at two other fallen politicians, both casualties of the European election.
That's right. Here in France, the leader of the conservative Les Républicains party has stepped down. Laurent Wauquiez has thrown in the towel. That's the headline from regional French paper Midi Libre. He was pushed out by his own right-wing party after they came in fourth place in the European elections, behind the Green Party even, with just 8.5%. France's conservative paper Le Figaro calls the elections a bitter failure that has left France's right in tatters. Basically, they were the victim of this Macron-Le Pen duel that we saw, with voters getting split between the president's center-right party and then the far-right National Rally Party. Meanwhile, in Germany, it's the leader of the Social Democrats, Andrea Nahles, who was forced to step down after her party's poor performance in the European elections. Der Tagesspiegel here says that it was a slap in the face that has left the SPD fighting for its survival. They say it's also really bad news for Angela Merkel and her coalition, since she governs alongside this party, the Social Democrats.
Alison, I'm very much looking forward to this last story you have for us. Some good news for coffee drinkers.
That's right, Jeannie. It turns out that it is not as bad for your arteries as previously thought. A study out of the UK that you can found that you can drink as many as, get this, 25 cups of coffee in a day without a negative impact on your heart. This study does not actually seem to have been funded by any coffee companies, which was one of my first thoughts about it. It was actually partially funded by the British Heart Foundation, so it seems to be relatively reliable. Researchers found that drinking 5 cups a day and even up to 25 cups was no worse for your arteries than drinking less than a cup a day, although it might leave you feeling quite jittery.
Certainly. If I drank 25 cups of coffee a day, I don't think I'd sleep for the next week. I know. Allison, thank you for that. Allison Sargent with that look at the press review today. You can always get a closer look again on our website. That address is france24.com.